every time I see a new dairy commercial, I kind of silently celebrate, even though it's not good, because it does mean that, oh, as you said, production is down, so we got to pump more into ads. And so it is a sign that the industry is, fruits, vegetables, grains, legumes, nuts, seeds. They don't have publicists. They don't have ad budgets. And so people just really need to know that every time they're shown an ad, or they've been marketed a certain way through a package, or even, as you said, through these influencers, these, wellness slash medical influencers, really question that and ask. Yeah, I feel like I'm the only person in the world cheerleading for blogs. That kind of seems scary, but also exciting. I find that's usually the two differences are, number one, animal ag has the benefit of government subsidies in their favor. And that's why they've been so powerful. They have millions of dollars in ad budget because they get it from the government. So that's what makes, vegan companies a little bit at a disadvantage.
Welcome to a game-changing episode of the Plant Fuel Podcast with me, your host and vegan nutritionist, Callum Weir. We're flipping the script on this episode and delving into the dynamic world of vegan marketing with the visionary Sandra Nomoto, author of Vegan Marketing Success Stories. This conversation isn't just for vegan business owners. It's for anyone looking to make a splash in the world of marketing, regardless of their dietary preferences. Sandra's insights are like golden nuggets, and in this episode we're mining them. From Sandra's own background to the genesis of her groundbreaking book, we explore the fascinating intersection of veganism and marketing. We peel back the layers of influencer marketing, dissecting tactics used by the animal agriculture industry, and uncovering the truth behind those eye-watering budgets that allow companies to snag the likes of Kim Kardashian. But we don't just stop there. We tackle the age-old question, are blogs still worth it? Sandra's answer might surprise you, and throughout it all, we're treated to invaluable insights, tips, and success stories from some of the most influential vegan businesses on the planet. So whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur, a budding business owner, or simply someone curious about the world of marketing, this episode is for you. Get ready to level up your marketing game and unlock the secrets to success vegan style. Before we delve into this wealth of knowledge, I want to extend my heartfelt gratitude to you, our listeners, for your continued support and engagement. Your curiosity drives me to bring the most valuable and insightful content possible. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider sharing it with your network and leaving a review or rating on your preferred platform. Your feedback helps me reach more listeners and continue spreading the plant-powered message. So let's jump into this transformative conversation with Sandra Nomoto and discover the keys to marketing success. Get ready to be inspired, educated, and empowered to take your business to the next level. Let's dive in. Sandra, welcome to the Plant Fuel Podcast. How are you?
I'm well. Thanks so much for having me. I know it's been a while.
It has been a while. I think we've had this kind of booked in, and it keeps changing because of difficulties like moving house and stuff like that. So we finally have you here. I've actually for this season of the podcast, I've actually read a lot of books for this season, and however, I think this one has been so much more beneficial than some of the others that I've read, because like myself, I have a vegan business, so I feel like for anyone who is looking to obviously, start a vegan business or have a vegan business themselves, obviously vegan marketing success stories is the way to go. But before we dive into that, let's put a pin in that for a second, because
All right.
behind you being the ethical marketer with Sandra Nomoto, what's been your journey that's led you up to today?
Oh, wow. Let's try and wrap that up in a few sentences. So I identify as a Filipino woman of color, originally born in Montreal, Canada, so the East Coast. And then my family moved to the West Coast, here in Vancouver, where I still live. Shortly after I was born. So I call Vancouver home. And I guess I started my first business, which ended up being a public relations agency in 2008, shortly after my first job, which lasted a year and a half. And yeah, and for just over 10 years, that was my world, public relations, learning how to reach out to media, storytelling on behalf of clients. And then coincidentally, that business journey sort of coincided with my vegan journey. So the same year I started that company, I had recently watched Earthlings, and I had known about veganism before that. And I thought to myself, of course, that's the most ethical lifestyle, but it's just too difficult. You know, only a few people in the world can live that way. But it wasn't until I saw Earthlings, really by accident, that I really learned, where our food comes from, and also how we use animals in so many industries. And so that really impacted me deeply. And I kind of thought to myself, okay, someday I'd like to be vegan. I just didn't kind of put a timestamp on it, right? So it took me a couple years to cut meat out of my diet. And then for a good chunk of time, I was still technically pescatarian. So eating some seafood on the weekends, maybe some eggs and dairy. I was never a big fan of seafood and eggs. And then during the week, learning to cook either vegan or vegetarian. So I lived that way for quite some time. And then it wasn't until 2018, I was really only vegetarian for about a year. Still, so pizza and ice cream, some of my favorite foods, right, that still contain dairy. And I'd had these digestive symptoms for many years, not related to my dietary transitions, that my health team was just never able to uh, properly diagnose. And so, yeah, just after a really bad bout of acid reflux in the middle of the night in 2018, I went back to my naturopath. I said, I need more answers to get to the bottom of this. And she said, let's do a food sensitivity test. And that's when I learned I was sensitive to dairy, among other things. And so she told me, all right, do a 4-month cleanse, take all these things out of your diet, and then reintegrate them back. That's the idea, to try and find out to which of these foods might be triggering your symptoms. And I came to the end of those 4 months and thought to myself, I was able to do 4 months without dairy, so I think I can be vegan now. And so that's sort of the date that I count from. It's been 6 years, and that year I also closed my PR agency. And so, yeah, kind of for a year and a half was figuring out what I wanted to do for my next career path. Didn't think I was going to stay in marketing. And then yeah, after meditating at the end of 2019, I got this booming intuitive voice, and it told me, you'll always be writing and you're vegan now. So put those two things together. And I went, all right, I heard the call. And so I started the business that I run now, originally as a copywriter for vegan companies. So that was 2020, and that since evolved into many other services for both vegan companies and authors. So hopefully that wraps up yeah, who I am and how that got me to today speaking with you.
Yeah, that's it's a lot to unpack. So
Yeah.
with the obviously your vegan journey, when did that start? What was that year?
Spring 2018 is kind of, yeah, like, so diet, all right, is fully vegan. Of course there's everything else, fashion, household products,
Yeah.
a lot of those items I've donated or replaced. But yeah, I find once you do diet, everything else is so much easier. It's so easy to spot label, vegan labels, and look for that sort of thing, or even just look at the ingredient list and see, oh, this is, yeah, it's got milk powder, so it's not vegan. So yeah, the date that I count from is that the day that I started that 4-month cleanse in 2018.
As you say, like when you do change your diet, everything else comes kind of naturally after that. Like your fashion and everything else, like your toiletries, your everything that comes with it is just like a natural progression after the diet.
Yeah.
I know for me, it's been so easy after making that switch itself. But weirdly enough, you said that obviously you had that undiagnosed digestive issue, and I had exactly the same. Where I kind of went on a cleanse for quite a few months, and it turns out that I was also allergic to dairy. But there's no real tests for that. They're just kind of like, let's do a little cleanse and see what happens. And then felt incredible after, not consuming dairy for however long. And I was kind of like, that's the last thing that I need to kind of make that change.
Yeah, and it wasn't until a year after that point that I learned not only are most people of color insensitive or sensitive in some way. So the number is like 90 up to 95%. It's crazy. But also more than half of the world is intolerant to dairy. So it just does not make any sense why we are still consuming these animal products and yeah, and calling it normal.
Yeah, it's insane because like especially in the nutrition field, no one talks about like the dairy. Like I think the world in general is like it's around 75% like intolerant to dairy, and then as you said, people of color as well are like yeah, it's something ridiculous. It's like nearly 100%. It's
Yeah, it's
like
like
in the it's
75 to 95.
yeah,
Yeah.
and no one ever speaks about that, and like they're just kind of like oh you're just gonna have to live with this issue. And people, but sometimes it just goes so undiagnosed that they're kind of like, oh, you're just gonna feel bloated and a bit like shit for like, a while. Um, and there's nothing they do, but like until you go on that cleanse and then you realize, oh, this is the thing that's really been screwing with my system. That's when you kind of realize that we don't need it in our bodies whatsoever. And it's wild to me that people then do add it back in afterwards as well, because some people will go on these cleanses and be like, like I can start eating cheese again. I'm like, you were allergic to dairy.
Yeah.
You're allergic to dairy in the first place. Like the cleanse hasn't fixed your issue. You're allergic, pure and simple. It's not magically now disappeared, because that's not how allergies work.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's unfortunate because we have all these remedies, quote unquote remedies like just get some Tums or some Pepto-Bismol or I've tried everything. Like I still take probiotics. I've tried the anti-acid pills, and it's as nice as this modern medicine is, it's not a cure. Right,
Yeah.
and as you said, it's the uh, a lot of people say food can either be the cause of your disease or it can be your medicine, and I really believe that, and you probably relate too. It's because we're not told food can be a trigger for certain symptoms. It's food is food, and oh, you need it for so and so nutrients. um yeah, but then you find out no, there are some foods that are really good for us and others aren't. So it's your standard junk foods, right? So yeah, it's just we live in a backwards world right now, but you and I are here to try and fight that.
Yeah, absolutely. As you say, it is very much like the education is not there around it, so people don't know. They're just like, oh, I'm going to consume this. I feel a bit iffy. Maybe it's just what I'm eating on that day. People don't put everything together. It's not really taught, and it's still very it's not really spoken about, especially when it comes to things like dairy and the like alcohol as well. Alcohol is a huge one.
Yeah.
Um, that a lot of people have a huge intolerance to, um, but don't realize. I just could like obviously still consume that as well on like a daily or a weekly and be like, oh, I feel fine. I may have a bit of a hangover, but I'm going to carry on this. Whereas a lot of people have an insensitivity to it as well.
Yeah, and I'm one of those people. I grew up that just me and alcohol do not get along, and I was just actually recently reflecting on 2018 also being the year that I gave up alcohol, because one of the things I found in that sensitivity test was I'm sensitive to brewers and bakers. Was it no, just brewers yeast, which is in beer, wine, and so it totally makes sense why I should never have been consuming these products. But now that I haven't been drinking in 6 years now, and I dabble in cannabis, but the non-alcoholic, the zero proof market has exploded, and I love that there are options. There's you can get a Moscato, you can get a rosé that's non-alcoholic now, and I'm just like, why go back? I feel so much better. I'll never have a hangover. I'll never be buzzed to the point where I don't know what I'm doing. So it's so great that these options are here for us now. Um, yeah, and there's no excuse. I don't know why you would want to drink alcohol.
It's one of those things because I've now been it's taken a while, but I've now been probably sober 5 6 months now, maybe. Um,
Nice.
because it just it's one of those things. Like I think in the last year, especially, I don't know if that's just my age, but it seems to be getting so much worse. And I was like, I don't
Yeah, I was just
enjoy
gonna
this
say
anymore.
age will do it too. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of woke up being like, yeah, my day or my weekend is now ruined. So I'm kind of like, yeah, let's throw this one to the side. But so obviously you mentioned that you sat down for a bit of meditation, and is that how the book idea came about?
No, but spirit does have something to do with it because I used to have this annual habit around the time of my birthday. I would go to an intuitive reader, and in 2021, she happened to say around the time of my birthday, your spirit guides are saying you're going to write another book. So I had, what is this, 2 years prior to that, I had self published my first book.
Hmm.
But I didn't really have any ideas for a second. So, I just kept thinking, obviously, I'm not going to write fiction. That's just not my jam. But what could I possibly write a second book about? And I just thought about how much I was fascinated by marketing. I've always been fascinated by marketing, and now I'm vegan. And so I did some Googling that summer to see if anybody had published a book about those two topics, and nobody had. And not only that, there was only one book out there about vegan business, called Vegan Ventures, which Katrina Fox had published in 2015. So
Mm.
I thought, this is the only book that's out there. Are you serious about vegan companies? And I thought to myself, what an underserved market. Because we've got tons of vegan cookbooks. We've got many books about why you should go vegan, but nobody really tackling the business side. So I thought, all right, I guess I got to be the one to do it. Because when you see a gap in the market and you've got an idea, you're like, all right, I guess I'm the one that needs to fill it. So that's how it came together.
That's incredible. Actually, yeah, no, because I know Katrina Fox as well. I actually think she only lives probably about half an hour away from where I am at the
Oh,
moment in
that's
Sydney.
right. Yeah.
But yeah, she's also in Sydney. But yeah, I think also what I felt very when reading through the book um, was very relatable to me is the fact that near enough everybody that you spoke to or have a story about, I've at one point had some kind of connection with, which has been really nice. Because obviously me being in Vegan Business Tribe with like David and Lisa, and then obviously networking with various amounts of people like Kevin Newell or the Vegan Sisters as well. It made the whole book kind of come alive. So I'm like, I know these people, and like the stories are kind of coming alive because like I've seen the work that they've been putting in as well, and it's just been incredible to read through and just see how these stories have kind of like escalated and how they've managed to market as well, which has been it's been a huge a huge benefit to me, I guess, especially me having a vegan business myself. It's kind of like, these are some of the things that I could implement at some point as well.
Cool. I'm so glad to hear that because I've talked to a lot of folks, some, who are not in the vegan space at all, who, won't know any of the names or companies possibly that I mentioned in the book. And then there are others who, like you, yeah, the folks at Vegan Business Tribe. And so a lot of familiarity, but yeah, I've never heard anybody say that. Yeah, their stories have come to life, at least their marketing stories, right? Not, we
Oh
can't
yeah.
go into everybody's life story, but yeah, I'm really glad to hear that because that was my goal with the book is just whether you're vegan or not, if you're marketing for a vegan company or interest or just starting a vegan company and you want to know uh, what are the best practices that other companies are using, here's what today's folks are telling you, or at least at the time that I wrote the book. And it's a wide cross section, and I really tried my best to get companies all around the world and also owned by different genders and different industries. I know that it's hard to get a balanced range. But yeah, but I did my best, and I'm super happy with all of the folks who contributed, and also all of the folks who didn't share stories, but they gave me permission to use examples that I found online. So that was really my goal with the book, and I'm glad it resonated with you.
Oh, absolutely. I think anybody that actually has a vegan business or any business, because the marketing tips there, like they're not just specific for vegans. Like this is great that these vegan businesses have, like expanded with their marketing goals, but marketing in general can be used in any way, shape, or form. Whether you're vegan or not, it just so happens that obviously these are the marketing success stories of vegan businesses. However, the tactics itself can be used in any way, shape, or form that you like, and what's going to work for you, and what may not work for other people, and what may work for other people may work for someone else,
Yeah.
which is great. But obviously, like, although it is vegan based, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be vegan to read it or get the business answers you need from it. Because they're vegan, it doesn't mean there's like a bias towards it. It's just the way the book was written.
Yeah, yeah, I'm glad to hear that because again, that was my kind of covert goal. Who knows like where this book might end up if it's, in some used bookstore or a library and somebody picks it up and they're not vegan, they know nothing about the vegan world, but they're learning about marketing and all of the case studies and examples they're learning from are vegan companies. Maybe that'll get them to think about, oh, like I should explore this whole vegan world that I've not been exposed to before. Because, like I said, there's many other cookbooks and other books about why you should go vegan or how, but yeah, nobody had really covered the business side except for vegan ventures, and so that was really my goal for the book. Whether you're vegan or not, you can learn about marketing. But yeah, also just my secret way of trying to get more people to be exposed to our world.
So, how many? Obviously, you reached out to various companies. How many companies did you reach out to for stories in the end?
Yeah, so my goal was to get 50 stories. So I thought to myself, if I reach out to about 200 companies, maybe I'll get that 50. That number ended up being almost 280. Yeah, so I reached out to almost 280 companies, and got 47 stories back. And then, like I said, I wanted at least one example for every marketing tactic that I talked about, and so yeah, found another few dozen examples that I found online and got permission to use those. So in total, there's close to 100 businesses mentioned in the book.
And I'm guessing there was gonna out of all the companies that you went for as well, there's definitely some that never replied.
That's right. Yeah. So yeah, I my method was like, yeah, the first email outreach, and then heard nothing a week later, reach out again, and there were some that I really wanted to have their story in the book, and so I really tried everything from finding people on LinkedIn, DMing them, DMing on Facebook, DMing on Twitter, and trying to reach those, and then of course going through just the general customer service emails, the hello at, the info at, and sometimes those folks would get me to the right person, but I would say 8 out of the 10 times I would get nothing back. So that in itself, just trying to find the right person, yeah, to participate in the book was a journey of itself. But yeah, I'm really happy with how it turned out, and like I said, nearly 100 companies, yeah, mentioned in the book. So a lot to draw from there.
Yeah, I feel like as well, was like going through, there was all sized companies as well. It wasn't literally you were going for smaller ones. There was like some larger companies in there as well. Um, which was great because then you get like the benefits from, like, the people just kind of like starting out, or the people that like have the smaller budgets, and then the people that have like the insane budgets as well, that like obviously someone like me would not be able to comprehend the amount of money that those people are spending on marketing, when like the budget for someone, let's say for my sort of business, for instance, is relatively small in comparison.
Yeah, and that was my goal too. Yeah, to get a range from solopreneurs all the way up to corporations. I have to say, not many corporations did participate. You know, I really wanted to get a sense of like, what do you do with $1 million budget? You know what I mean? Marketing budget, and those folks, you know, did not either declined or they didn't, or I wasn't able to reach them. So yeah, I would say most of what you're going to read in the book are that small to medium size. I think maybe the max budget mentioned was like maybe 50,000 US. But yeah, a lot of the folks, you know, when it came to the budget question, were like, you know what, we don't really do the campaign model where we assign a certain budget, you know, let's say a quarterly budget, you know, for a 3 month campaign. A lot of them came back and said, you know, here's what we do, like, here's what we've tried. And then we just keep doing what works. And this is what works for us. And I think that's cool too, because yeah, especially when you're at the startup stage and you don't have much of a marketing budget, it's a lot of just trial and error and seeing what works.
Mm. And I think what I've realized as well, like from the book, is there's no real kind of secret to marketing for vegans. We're all kind of using the same tactics and methods that kind of work for us. But there's such a huge array of different methods that work for one brand, but not for the other. For instance, there was obviously people doing their documenting styles, which is kind of what I do on stories, which works for me. Whereas there's other people that have such like different journeys, and there's no real kind of like secret to marketing for a vegan business. We're just kind of throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. And I think that's the same with any company, is they're seeing what works for them first.
Yeah, absolutely. I say, you know, every company's strategy is different and it has to be. Even if you were to copy exactly what your competitor was doing, your audience is going to be slightly different. So it may not resonate in the same way. And so, yeah, everyone's strategy is different. That's one big thing that I learned from the book. The other question I was asked very often, especially from podcast hosts who were vegan themselves, were like, what's the difference between marketing a vegan business? And as you said, I said, um, yeah, there really is no secret. We don't have a magic green bullet in our hands. We're all using the same tools. I would say the only two differences are, number one, animal ag has the benefit of government subsidies in their favor. And that's why they've been so powerful. They have millions of dollars in ad budget because they get it from the government. So that's what makes, you know, vegan companies a little bit at a disadvantage. The other is if you sell a product, so for example, a food product or a fashion product, where the default is consuming the animal version, you're going to have to do a little bit more education to your audience in terms of why you should eat, for example, my vegan burger patty versus a beef burger patty, right? So there's a little bit of extra work that they need to do, but really, yeah, we've all got the same tools that the others are using.
I think as you said, obviously we have the ethics on our side as well. But obviously, we are competing against obviously these giant budgets, and I think that's where the huge issue is as a for vegan companies is when we're marketing our businesses, no matter how hard you're trying to sell, is that the meat, the dairy, the animal agriculture industry in general, as a whole, has huge budgets, like unattainable budgets to like the average human, especially to the average business starting out, because they have the money to invest in marketing to make people believe certain things, play around with like certain studies that come out that's in that favor, and then they can hire like things like behavioral psychologists to like attract attention. So we don't have those budgets on our side compared to what they do. But also at the same time, like you can tell that these companies, like the meat industries, are coming under fire because they will then, pump money into things and market animal products that they usually wouldn't need to. Because there's definitely obviously a big shift in like, consumer demand at the moment as well, especially when you're pumping so much money into things for ad clicks for like milk, for instance. Because like something that would have been consumed on a regular back then is now slowly dropping. So there's now all these kind of like, campaigns to kind of like, you need to drink milk, you need this once again for your calcium. Although we now know that we don't need milk for calcium.
Yeah, and I wish the average consumer knew, and that's probably one big thing I didn't mention in the book is that advantage of the subsidies. Like every time I see a new dairy commercial, I kind of silently celebrate, even though it's it's not good, because it does mean that, oh, as you said, production is down, so we got to pump more into ads, and so it is a sign that the industry is waning, and demand is decreasing. But unfortunately, the sign of that is we're seeing more ads. So that's the double-edged sword there.
Yeah, that's the thing, because I think it's especially the dairy industry in particular, and it's one of those ones where we know it's slowly falling and crumbling, but you only have to look at like the studies and the statistics to kind of see that their their market is slowly just deteriorating. Because if you go to like a shop these days, you'll see like the dairy aisle, but then you'll see rows and rows and rows of plant milks, literally thousands of pounds, like. And those people are now getting bigger budgets as well, because if we look at like companies like Oatly, for instance, Oatly have incredible marketing. Um, their marketing, I don't know what their budget is, but I'm assuming that's a very high budget as well to
Yeah.
kind of compete with like the animal industry. But like for the smaller kind of like oat milk, or like your almond milks and that, they won't have such a big budget. But like with one of the top players up there, they can also jump onto that and hook onto that as well at the same time, and people will see that there's a slow rise, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. We're seeing it in the dairy aisle. I think a couple of years ago, somebody, took a photo and shared it on social, and it was like half or more than half was plant milks, versus cows. So yeah, we're seeing it on the shelves for sure. We just
I
need the
think
ads to catch up.
yeah, absolutely. And I think as well, like you're seeing these other industries with their big budgets, but they're like relying a lot on greenwashing these days as well, because there's such an environmental toll that people are now aware of. So they're using these like greenwashing tactics to be like, oh, this is sustainable, this sustainable, that, beef, chicken, clothing, or whatever's coming from that industry. However, obviously we have the science now to back these things up, to be like because there's not much regulation around it, unfortunately. But there's starting to be a bit of a regulation around it, but it's not much compared to what it should be. So they're just relying on very, very kind of like small tactics, but with their like giant budgets, to be like, yeah, we can kind of get away with this.
Yeah, and you're definitely seeing it now. At the time I published my book, yeah, I didn't see nearly as much of this. Yeah, as you said, greenwashing, blue washing, but yeah, they're making up, labels, climate friendly beef, and sticking that on a package, and yeah, and it's just, I really hope that consumers don't fall for that, because unless it comes from a real certified body, which many of these don't. It really doesn't mean anything, and it's the same as the happy cows and the happy chickens that you see on these packages. It's the same story we've been told. Just they're getting more aggressive with it, and so yeah, we really have to be smart as consumers, when we're looking at that.
Yeah, especially so I know in the UK we have one of the biggest news channels has a TV doctor on it, Dr. Hillary. I'm just going to call his name out. I don't care. He has contracts that got leaked, which shows that he was being paid a ridiculous amount by the dairy industry to promote milk and dairy products. And obviously, public health is in this guy's hands, and people assume he's a reputable source. However, obviously with his contracts being leaked, it then obviously shows that he has a biased agenda, because he has such a big payout for like to promote it. And that's the same with a lot of like people that you see on TV. You have musicians, you have like nutritionists, you have physicians, dietitians, all on these big channels, but with a narrative as well, because they've been paid the big bucks to kind of like um go on and kind of like spread or cherry pick articles, which obviously we don't have because nobody's paying. No, big almond or big broccoli, as people would say, are not paying us to spread. We really benefit nothing from making people go vegan, apart from some of the companies, like will we obviously having more profits, but apart from us, the daily people, us people, we don't really have that. We don't have that kind of benefit because nobody's telling us. No, we're not making any money from telling people to go vegan at all.
Yeah, and yeah, I'm going to be speaking at the Planted Expo here in Vancouver, where I am, in early June. Um, and one of the things that I want to share is exactly that. It's that fruits, vegetables, grains, legumes, nuts, seeds, they don't have publicists, they don't have ad budgets. And so people just really need to, yeah, to know that every time they're shown an ad, or they've been marketed a certain way through a package, or even, yeah, as you said, through these influencers, these, you know, wellness slash medical influencers, really question that and ask, is this, are they being paid to sell me an idea that may not be true? So yeah, again, it really comes down to consumers being smart and knowing, yeah, knowing when they're being lied to, really.
Yeah, I think that is a huge thing because, as you say, like these companies, like Apple's don't get ad clicks. They don't have like a huge budget behind it. Like Apple's your normal, like broccoli, like things like that. We know they're healthy for us, but no one's paying. No one's paying us to like promote these. No one's paying companies to promote them. I've never seen in my life a broccoli or a cauliflower advert. Like they don't exist. But as you said, like obviously influencer marketing and like that, I understand influencer marketing. I have a background in marketing myself, which I now hate marketing due to the marketing background I had, where we used to have to work with influential people to obviously spread the message. But you need to, it's weird, but sometimes like especially with influencer marketing, like as a vegan business, you may have to you may pay someone substantially big a large amount of money, or micro influencer amount of money to kind of promote something, but you also have to be aware that these people may at one point become an ex-vegan, and I think that is, you really have to kind of choose who you're actually dealing with on a day-to-day basis, because there's some people that do this as a quote unquote fad diet or something like that, or where they just jump on a bandwagon. And it's I think these days it's very hard to work out who's a trustworthy source, especially when it comes to influencer marketing. Because for instance, you've got Beyond Meat, huge budgets, like paying out for Kim Kardashian. However, it's not, she's not a vegan herself, I don't think.
Yep.
And it's great that these people will be trying these products, but her then consuming meat as well kind of gives the gives the kind of scope that you can still eat meat and have these at the same time, which is great because obviously you got the flexibleness of it. However, we're wanting somebody like, let's say for instance, Joaquin Phoenix, who is very much the vegan, I guess, where
Yeah, a bit of a poster child.
that would have been the better option.
Yeah, and really, that, again, I wanted Beyond Meat to contribute to my book. I was not able to reach them. It would have been, yeah, just really cool to kind of get a glimpse into their strategy and what they do in terms of tactics. But yeah, my feeling is, because Beyond Meat, their goal has always been to attract omnivores and try to get them to eat more plants. And so to me, it does make sense why they used Kim Kardashian, who isn't a vegan. I know, I think she's mostly plant-based. That's how she identifies. So certainly not a vegan, but yeah, but maybe she is kind of aligned with that brand, because she's not fully vegan, but she does want to eat more plants in her diet. And so maybe that will resonate with, especially like the younger, trendier, maybe female crowd. But yeah, at least folks who know her and who follow her. So I do see, I know why Beyond Meat kind of went after her with that particular endorsement.
Yeah, but she is one of the most influential people on the planet, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, which is great for their marketing campaigns. It's just obviously, I think when it comes to it, you just need to be. I think just need to be, I guessing more careful, just in case these people revert back and be like, "Ah, oh, this didn't
Yeah.
work for me," and then you're kind of like, "Oh, this whole campaign has really kind of backfired." Much like the Got Milk adverts back in the back in the '90s, which obviously they now started. Is it
It
Silk? I
started
think
up again.
yeah, it started up again, but also you now have Silk who going up with Silk ads, which are exactly the same as the Got Milk ads, but the Got Silk, which
Yeah.
is great just to see the plant based version of it, which they mimicking it absolutely, and I love it. But I think as well, like obviously like you mentioned that obviously you went for like a reading and that's kind of how the book came to fruition. So what is do you have like a personal journey with like spirituality and kind of like meditation and like things like that?
Yeah, I think I've always been a spiritual person. It really started from childhood. So I grew up with in a Catholic family where I knew prayers even before we entered school, and then went to a Catholic school for 13 years, and so I was really a part of the church. I ended up leaving that church. Just about 20 years ago, because I found the particular parish that I had grown up in started to show more anti-queer views and anti-abortion and that sort of thing, and that really turned me off. And so I went, all right, like God and I are taking our relationship outside of this particular institution. But yeah, I would say like yoga really got me into meditation, and I have a pretty standard or structured practice where I meditate twice daily before breakfast and before dinner. So those are my non-negotiables. And then, and then I've sort of sought out, intuitives when I feel like I need a reading. I've just this past, in the last couple of months, I've really been getting into human design and gene key. So, I consider myself sort of a student of all these different places and tools. But yeah, meditation is probably that one thing that's a non-negotiable, and I find that really helps hone my intuition as well. And I've really been able to track. It'll actually be almost 10 years since I've been meditating twice daily in that way. Um, it just when you run a business, I'm sure you feel this. A lot of your decisions that you make are really gut decisions and made intuitively. And so, I found that meditation has really helped me with that. And just for general mental and emotional balance.
I completely understand it. I do meditation near enough every day, as much as possible. Normally in my morning time, but yeah, I think trusting that intuition as well is key because obviously I don't have a board of people around me to bounce ideas off of. You kind of like, oh, I need to really think this thing through, and I kind of go in with trusting my intuition as well as far as possible. I think that like whenever I will trust that more than I will trust my casual brain. I guess I'm going to be like the intuition normally, as long as I'm guessing you've trained it right as well. Um, you're kind of like I'm just going to go with that and see what happens. And I think it is that it is learning to trust the intuition as well because a lot of people still won't. And I'm like for especially when it comes to business, you kind of what feels like the safe option probably isn't the safe option, and just kind of go with what your head's saying, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
Yeah. Yeah, and because I know you're in Vegan Business Tribe, there's always that community to pull from. But yeah, but absolutely, that the decisions ultimately come down to you as the owner. So, and that distinction between what might be your critical voice or your ego, maybe telling you something out of fear. I think you really need to distinguish that from your intuitive voice, which maybe scares you, but in kind of like an exciting way. Like that's what I feel like your intuition does. It's kind of guiding you in that path that kind of seems scary but also exciting. um yeah, I find that's usually the road that we're meant to take.
Hmm. But especially when you just mentioned ego, because I think when I first started the business, I ran on ego at first because it was doing very well at first. I was like, I'm just going to kind of go with this. But when you go with ego, that's when it all backfires on you. You're kind of like, yeah, this I can't continuously run on what I think, because at the moment this is working, and if I keep doing this, yeah, it's a nice little, my head getting bigger, and this is working, this is perfect. But after a while, things need to change, and if you don't make that connection with yourself, um, then the business will kind of take a run, and then you're just kind of stuck there. So yeah, it took a while for me to be like, I'm just going to trust this intuition now, and be like, yeah, we need to make these changes, because if I didn't do that and I kept running with the ego, I don't think I'd still have a business at this point.
That's great realization.
Yeah, I think as well, like as you mentioned, vegan business tribe, and I think one of the stories on there was their obviously their customer journey, um, and that customer journey very much did resonate with me, because that is the reason that I joined vegan business tribe, and also I think that's the reason why I haven't left in 3 years.
Nice.
But yeah, I think I joined them. In 2020, and it was very much it was the customer journey that it kind of took me on and took me around, which is obviously mentioned with them. And yeah, I don't think if it wasn't for that, I don't think I would have stayed with them or even found them. But they made everything so easy. It was. And it also mentions it so much in the book about that. I'm just like, this is incredible. This is the reason why I say that, and this is also the reason they are successful.
Yeah. Yeah. I know David had, because he and Lisa both have extensive marketing experience, there's probably so much more they could have shared, but David was really, I guess, selective and then in what he could tell me in the time that he had. And so I think, yeah, just that whole journey. And actually it inspired the entire chapter one, because I wasn't planning on writing a chapter on marketing basics, but just that whole fact and how they obtain members. Yeah, I just thought, okay, well, I've got to do a chapter on the basics, because because this is so important to their strategy, and it might be the same for many others. And so yeah, so it was actually Vegan Business Tribe that inspired that whole first chapter.
Mm. Oh, I put out an Instagram post the other day to see if there's any questions about vegan businesses to people, um, that people may want to ask, because I have quite a few people that have businesses on there, and obviously you writing the book on vegan businesses, I thought it'd be nice to see if there's any questions for you. And I had one that came back, and I'm also skeptical about them these days, and that's how are we feeling about blogs these days? Because I feel like blogs had their time and place, but I don't know if people with the resurgence of like TikTok and Instagram Reels and things like that, whether blogs still really hold a place in the community.
Yeah, I feel like I'm the only person in the world cheerleading for blogs. And I am okay with that. I actually think it should be one of the foundational parts of any company's strategy. And it's not only for visitors to your site. So there's so many things you can create a blog around, right? Whether it's your own story or your team's story, maybe deep diving on a certain product or service that may require more, yeah, a bit longer of a description or instructions than the little paragraph that you get on an e-commerce site. There's news announcements. You can take your podcast interviews or other media interviews like this and turn it into a transcript, and that's a blog. There's first of all, there's infinite ways you can use a blog, and second, it is not only for the visitors to your website, but it's for Google. And that's the main reason why I'm a cheerleader for this tactic, is because a lot of ways that people find businesses today are through Google. And yes, people are using TikTok and YouTube and Instagram and all those as well. But if they're using Google, um, you have to always have a fresh bank of content on your site with specifically the keywords that you want to rank for. And blogs are just naturally built for that. Like if you for example, create a Squarespace website. Squarespace already has all of those fields there for you when you create a new blog post. And so a lot of these new website platforms that are coming out now are already intuitively built for that blog function. And so, yeah, so that's what I say. It's not just for storytelling, it's for search engine optimization as well.
Yeah, I used to have a blog that I when I first started marketing, which I do one weekly, and then I just fell out of it as well because I was like, I really don't see. Well, it's not that I didn't see the benefit, I guess, in it. It was more the fact that I was like, oh, I have to write a blog today, like, and I think once you miss 1 week or 2 weeks, you just miss so much more going on down the line. And I don't think I've written one in about a year. And it's one of those things that again I've also been thinking about restarting back up. And I'm glad that person actually asked the question, because I think with that answer, I very much should probably jump back on. Obviously, a few more blogs. Another question we did have was there like a company that story that came back to you that stood out more than the rest to you?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, there's definitely a few. The one that I always love talking about is that of Meredith Marin, who runs a company called Vegan Hospitality. So, um, before she started that business, she found herself relocating to Aruba, where her husband is originally from. So this is 2016. And as a vegan, she found herself not with great options. So both at the restaurants and at the grocery store. So she really took it upon herself to, um, as you'll find out, really like veganize this island. And she started with chefs at restaurants. So she reached out to them and said, "Hey, what can you make me that's vegan?" And that actually drove the demand for some of these foods that they needed to bring in into grocery stores. So that's how she started. And then she really took it upon herself to talk about veganism in any way possible. So she taught cooking classes. She spoke to local media. She had the opportunity to appear in various travel magazines that were in airline seats flying to Aruba, as well as in every hotel room in Aruba. Yeah, and in 2018, she got the opportunity to partner with the Aruba Tourism Authority to sponsor 6 vegan influencers. I think they were primarily from the US, if not all, to have a trip. And so they did an influencer trip, showed them a really good time, and some of that content that they created is still, top ranking on Google when you Google vegan and Aruba. And of course she started social media accounts and started using the hashtag vegan Aruba. So because of all of these initiatives that Meredith did, shortly after that influencer trip, Happy Cow named Aruba the most vegan friendly island in the Caribbean. And that's huge. So because of the success she had there, I think she's moved back to the States. um, she started the company Vegan Hospitality to teach people exactly how to do what she did, maybe in the areas where they live. So huge. Yeah, I just love that story because it just shows you the power of one person. You may be a vegan out there and thinking, what kind of difference can I make here? Well well, there you go. You can really help. And when I say veganize, I don't mean every restaurant is going to turn vegan, but make it vegan friendly so that people like you and visitors to where you live have options, and really help boost the lifestyle where you are.
That is literally the whole thing. You know, when people are like, "Oh, like one vegan's not going to make a difference," well, it happened. It literally happened, and it does. So you need that one person just to kind of do what they need to do, and things will change.
Yeah.
which is incredible. I actually absolutely love that story. That's amazing. I didn't realize that at all because I think I've actually spoke to Meredith at one point. Because I think she's also part of Vegan Business Tribe. And yeah, I've never actually had the conversation with her, but I didn't realize that was the story behind it. But that's incredible. That's yeah, it's mind blowing that like one person can make such a big difference to it, especially like an island.
No, she didn't set out to do this, right? She was just one person who relocated and found, something's got to change for me. But thankfully, she knew Aruba is quite a popular tourism destination. And so she knew she couldn't be the only one facing these problems. Travelers are going to want these options too. And so, yeah, she just had that really great forethought to say, if I'm having trouble here, I know other travelers are going to have the same issues. So let's try and improve this as a community. And yeah, and she did it.
That's absolutely incredible. Um, I think the last one I had was from a company actually, which was rebranding. Is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? I'm guessing it really depends on what the company is looking to do. I've also thought about rebranding in the past and still think about it most days. But also, there's so much work and effort into that, and will that ruin the whole marketing? Your marketing and what you've been doing for the last however many years, I guess.
Yeah, and I think you said it. It's really contextual, right? But I think one thing that we've touched on is that all businesses change. They never stay the same, except for maybe Coca-Cola's logo. They've almost never changed it. It's always going to be that red and white, right? But yeah, it really depends on how. Yeah, like maybe your products or services are changing drastically, and that may be a call for a rebrand. Your audience is a little bit different, or you've sort of pivoted in terms of who you're targeting. I think there's definitely some reasons why it may be a good idea. And then there's also in terms of rebrand, what are we talking about? Are we talking a complete name change, or are we just talking like, yeah, the company name will stay the same and maybe it's just a refresh of, a different logo or changing up our colors. But yeah, I think at one point it like my first company I rebranded, and this company that I have, I've changed titles twice now. And so for me, change is yeah, just part of the evolution of my brand. And yeah, I think every business needs to at least look at their brand, minimum once a year, and just to see kind of what the feel is in terms of what they're putting out there and how it's resonating with their audience. And then yeah, I don't think it should be any more frequent than 5 years. I think if you're changing every 5 years, that's probably too frequent, and your audience, may get a little confused there. But I think if it's been a significant amount of time, yeah, and it feels like the company is changing, and therefore the visual identity needs to as well. I think, yeah, that could be a reason too.
I love that because I think especially for me, I think in the last I'd say probably 6 months, I've also thought about rebranding, but not so much like the colors aesthetic that mainly a name change and that's one of the things that I think has obviously been very kind. It's a scary move to do is changing a whole entire name because everybody knows the brand as that name, and how is that going to affect everything when, especially when you end up changing a website and end up changing a domain name and everything that you've worked on for the last however many years, and then changing the whole entire name, and obviously everything just kind of slightly backfiring, especially when it comes to things like Google rankings and stuff like that, I guess. Because there's so much there that you have to kind of contend with. There's not just a simple switch over, and
Yeah.
like it would have been years and years and years ago. It's now kind of there's so many things that are linked to it. People's Instagrams, people's Facebooks, people's TikToks, blogs, everything like that. Everything's combined, so it's very much disrupting. It's like kind of like a volcanic eruption, which it will either destroy or it'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think one way you could do it is take your audience on that journey and kind of let them know in advance change is coming. And that way it's not so much of a surprise, right? And it's not like you have to show them the whole new website, before it's 3 months before it goes live. But yeah, just take them on that journey and let them know change is coming, and it builds that anticipation and that sense of suspense, good in a good way, right? That maybe will excite your audience. And then when you do the big reveal, then it's more like a ooh, rather than a why did they do that. So I think there can be a smart way to unfold that rebrand as well.
Yeah, kind of like document the kind of process of it, I guess, as well, because that way they are going on that journey along with you, and it's not just kind of out of the blue you've done it, and then these people have no idea who this new person is, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Or they type in your old domain and then it's got to forward to the new one. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, for the people that are looking to, get into vegan marketing, or they want to pick up your book, what do you want them to get from your book?
Oh wow. Yeah, I just want to share all of the possible marketing tactics that are out there that real companies have been using, and they say these things have brought them success. That's the first thing. So if you know nothing about marketing, this is a real guide for you to learn everything possible that's out there for you to do. And then second, yeah, it's just kind of my love letter to the vegan industry. And again, whether or not you're vegan or running a vegan business, I think it gives you a really good glimpse of who was around in at the time that I wrote my book, so 2021, 2022, and what they were using to grow their companies. So I would say those are the two main takeaways I hope people get from the book.
And yeah, I can also confirm that the book is absolutely incredible, and I think I've taken a lot from it as well. It's been very beneficial seeing, obviously, everybody's different journeys and what they're doing. And I would definitely say that if you do have a vegan business, or even if you don't have a vegan business and you're a vegan with a business, then or you're someone with a vegan business but you're not specifically vegan yourself, that this is so beneficial, and it's definitely probably one of the most beneficial marketing books that I've read in a long time.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm glad to hear that.
So, if we want to get the book, where can we find the book, or as such, where can we find you?
Easiest place is with my name, so sandranomoto.com. I've got all the links up on my site. And actually, if you are in the UK and you use Audible, I have access to free promo codes. So I can actually give you a code that'll get you the audiobook free. But that's only for Audible UK users. And if you just want a teaser, I give chapter one digitally to all of my email subscribers. And you can just hop on my site as well and subscribe to my email list. And I'll give you chapter one. So you can sort of check it out for yourself and get a teaser.
Amazing. Also, with the Audible, did you record it yourself?
I did not. I wish I could have, but I just don't have the skills for that, and nor a proper microphone. So yeah, so I hired a narrator who did that for me.
Yeah, I feel like narrating also is. I feel like that's a hefty job. I feel like it's one of those jobs that I definitely wouldn't want to do, because I feel like there's so much that goes into that as well. Whenever I listen to anything on Audible, I always think about these people and how much they had to do, and how many re-recordings and things like that. It seems like it would have been a very hectic job.
Yeah, I mean, as nice as it would have been to get the author's voice, I did it. I tried a 7-minute test and just too many mistakes came out, and I thought I don't want to give anybody the job of editing this, so I'm just gonna just hand that over to a pro, and she did a great job. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time, Sandra. You've been absolutely incredible. Absolutely enjoyed this conversation, and absolutely enjoyed your book as well. It's been so beneficial. So thank you so much for coming on.
You're so welcome, Callum. Thanks so much for having me.